Hey, Pro Life Gen, welcome back to the Kristan Hawkins Show. Today on the docket, we have a special guest, Representative Jonathan Almond, a freshman state representative from the state of North Carolina, is shaking things up. And we had the honor at Students for Life Action to campaign for him this year. And I've got him on the show today because we're going to talk about a pro-life victory that he's already got under his belt. And it's a battle that's happening right now that you probably haven't even heard about. Then we're going to talk about a slimy scheme Virginia Democrats have launched to make a path for a new constitutional amendment they hope will unleash abortion through all 9 months of pregnancy in the Commonwealth, as well as strip Republican votes from the U.S. House of Representatives. Yeah, it's crazy. Then we're going to talk about IVG. No, not IVF, IVG. And if you haven't heard about it yet, this segment's going to be definitely from you. Then I'm going to talk about some tips for how to talk with a friend who is suffering from infertility and about IVF. I'm going to talk about how you can speak to Christian friends about abortion who may not be pro-life yet. So let's get into it. First up today, I am so happy to have a guest on the Kristan Hawkins Show, Representative Jonathan Almond, a North Carolina state rep serving District 73. Representative Almond is one of our pro-life champions who's been fighting for life every day in the state house. And let me tell you, state legislators and legislatures are where the difficult and courageous work of ending abortion is actually happening every single day. And as if you've tuned into my show before, you will know this is something that does not get talked about enough in conservative politics or in the pro-life movement about the actual day-to-day work that's happening at your state capitol that makes a difference, especially now in a post-Roe era. So Representative Almond, thanks for joining me today.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful for the work that you guys do.
It's been an honor to kind of see the full cycle because we talk a lot at Students for Life Action about why pro-life leaders and grassroots activists have to be engaged in politics. And it's not always, as you can imagine, everyone's funnest thing that they like to do, which is door knocking for a candidate. But it's so important. And so it's been really exciting to kind of follow your journey just from you submitting your candidate survey, us deciding that we wanted to be involved in your election last year, you winning your election, now in leadership there in the House in North Carolina, in Raleigh. It's been exciting to kind of see the full, I guess, circle of pro-life political activism. And it's really making the case even further in my mind as cementing how important it is for we, the pro-life movement, to be involved at the local state level.
Absolutely. I mean, you guys are doing great work. So, I go to a church and I think most of the folks that I go to church with supported me. But one of the guys that, really we have a fun back and forth banter said, you know what, I'm not really sure if I'm going to vote for you. But I tell you what, I did have this young organization come by and they knocked on my door and they were pro-life. And he was so impressed with the courage that these students had and their ability to articulate, what their values are, why they're, knocking doors for these candidates and, what their goals and hopefully in the future for North Carolina is. So It's really great. But, whenever I got started, I'm brand new to politics. I didn't hold an office before this. This was not on my bingo card at all to get involved, but really I have 3 younger kids myself. I have a daughter who's 9 and twin boys who are 7. And so, really started to get involved politically when COVID was going on. For our family, we have a different dynamic. My twins are mostly nonverbal. So, as all this stuff was going on, it really inspired me to show up to the school board, get involved politically, figure out who is in these leadership roles locally and on the state level. And, as we approached the time for filing, I felt like God was really telling me to get involved. And so, I had some conversations with folks that I value their trust and advice. And, got into prayer and talked to my family, and God really made a way for me to get there. And I'm so, I'm focused on this because for me, my children are the light of everything that I do. I think that my boys have really inspired me into action. As we walk down this path on the federal level with the Make America Healthy movement, it's really what I feel like my mission is in Raleigh is to not only advocate for life, but advocate for the health of our children once they're here. So it's really important to me to see this movement advance.
That's awesome. I think that's so important. I love it when people are like, I just got involved in politics. I've didn't consider running, and then I started running because of what's happened in my family, what I've personally seen, because I know those are the leaders that we want serving in office, at our state houses and federally, are those who didn't, grow up thinking, I'm going to be president of the United States and I'm going to make a strategic step to doing that. But seeing the real life implications of the policies that are being voted on, whether it's in Raleigh or whatever state you're living in, with your state capital, just that I love, because that's where you see these courageous leaders standing up. And that's what we're always looking for at the pro-life generation, is who are the leaders that we can invest in, who are going to be pro-life leaders, that are going to put their faith and their beliefs over their political party. And I think because it gets, and you certainly, I think, have probably seen the pressure gets intense. And so we were able to knock on some serious doors. I mean, I think it was your race, it was over 3,000 doors were knocked. In Brian's race, it was over 1,500 doors. You won your primary by 586 votes, and Brian won his by 167 votes. And so It's amazing when I think about—
It made a huge difference.
Yeah, I mean, knocking 3,000 doors, you won by 500 some votes, that makes the difference. And I think a lot of sometimes members of the pro-life gen think it's impossible to make a difference in politics, especially when we think about what's going to be happening, nationally for the U.S. Senate, right? You've got poor North Carolinians, your TV ads are all going to be on the U.S. Senate, right? And then Georgia, you have these two huge U.S. Senate races that are going to be hundreds of millions of dollars being spent in TV ads and grassroots campaigns. And you think, well, what can I, as a pro-life student, do? Get involved in a local race, because we've seen it time and time again, your race, Brian's race in North Carolina. And that's made a difference, because can you explain to, I guess, everyone who's watching what the dynamics are in the legislature? You have a very pro-abortion governor, I believe, in North Carolina. But what's the hope that we're seeing with the makeup of the legislature at right now?
Well, I think a lot of legislators agree with us. And, unfortunately, the way that politics works is it's all about numbers, right? The ability for us to make more movements and strides towards, the eventual goal, is harder with the governor that we have. So, as we move into 26, the way that we can continue to make strides is to win more elections. We are in one seat shy of the supermajority in the House.
Wow.
And we have a supermajority in the Senate. So just back—
That's important. Back that up. What does a supermajority mean?
So it gives us the ability, to pass any legislation out of the body, you need a simple majority. So it's half plus one. And so in the House, it's 61 to get something through the House. Now, if it passes the House and the Senate and gets to the governor's desk and he vetoes it, we have to have a 3/5 majority, which puts the House at 72 yes votes. Or, you're missing, two folks that would have voted no, and then that allows you to still get that 3/5 number. So it's a numbers game, and so we are one seat shy, and so it's going to be really important in 26. And a lot of folks remember the former governor, who we used to have, Roy Cooper, is now running for Senate. So I think people will be excited to get out and be active. And I think that, for your viewers that are watching, you talked about how important it was. And again, for me, as somebody who doesn't have a brand, maybe a lot of people don't know my name, you can only talk to so many people, right? And so then it comes down to being able to message, right? Which means you've got to raise money. Well, something that I was able to do because, I'm trying to do all these things at once for something that's very new to me is to knock on as many doors as I can. And I knocked, 500 to 1,000 doors myself, and just having a conversation with somebody and is totally different than just some piece of paper that shows up into your mailbox. It gives you the ability to make a connection with somebody. And, for me, I felt like God was doing, urging me to do this. So it's kind of like you just push all the chips into the table and you tell people what you really feel like. And I tell my story about my sons and why I feel like I'm supposed to be here. And it really brings down people's walls, and you're able to make a connection with them and show people, hey, like, I'm not doing this for some career. I'm doing this because I feel called to it. And like you were saying before, I think that, this Students for Life generation, the younger generation, I still consider myself young. I'm in my last year of my 30s, but when you look at the General Assembly, and I love all the people that I work with, but that system was designed for people who have raised kids and have established wealth or are retired. And so, I think as we try, and I think we are winning the culture war, we need younger people to understand that, if you want to have some sort of control over your future, you've got to be invested. And if that means getting out and knocking doors, working the polls, being more aware of, the news. And I think the news has changed so much. We have so much access to information now. And now it's not like, well, just whatever the box on the wall tells you, and long form things like this are ways for people to get more information. So, I think we're winning the culture war. I think that, we're moving in the right direction. And as we continue to be courageous, it's contagious.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's critical. What you said is that you're one seat away from a supermajority, in the House?
Yes.
In North Carolina. I mean, that's massive, because when you have a state that's been leaning left for a number of years, now it went Republican for the presidential, but the Senate race, this U.S. Senate race is going to be tight. This is really important because we still have a pro-choice governor in North Carolina. Yeah. And if we get that supermajority, we're able to override vetoes, and then actual substantial legislation can be enacted. And your seat, even the seat you're in, was a Democrat seat that was flipped to Republican.
That's right. And I mean, so you talked about Brian's seat. So he lost to the lady that I ran against in 24, and that was the supermajority seat. So they spent a ton of money, and all of the mailers that came out against me in 24, she was the queen bee of Planned Parenthood, and that was the war drum that they banged on, was this guy's going to ban abortion and he's going to do all of these things, and that was really the only platform that they had, and it just didn't resonate with the people. I think that people, have kind of gotten tired of that being the only drum that it seems like the left has to bang on is these social issues. And, I think culture is changing, and I'm happy to be a part of that change.
You certainly have come in with a bang into the legislature. We're still one vote short of the supermajority, but you and Brian actually worked recently to get a piece of legislation on the floor and voted out of the House. It's, I think, in the Senate right now. It was voted out. Senate's coming back to the House when you guys reconvene in a couple weeks. But no one's talking about it because it's not like state legislative season. That's usually January through May. But can you tell everyone who's tuning in what victory you've just seen and what it could do, this SB 378?
So we just passed something out of the House that would ban Medicaid dollars to funding Planned Parenthood. And, what's so interesting is that the way that they attempt to frame this is that, we're somehow removing health care from women. But, none of these establishments are in rural areas. They're all in urban areas, and it is very much a targeted thing against, seems like women in areas that are cities, and why that is, I don't know. And so we actually have a doctor in the House who, brought up a great point that, a lot of these areas that they're talking about losing some sort of healthcare coverage, there's no shortage of healthcare providers in those areas. So it's really disingenuous to say that, this is somehow going to disrupt the care that women receive.
So what's going on with the bill? So you dropped this bill, this 378. It was in another bill, right? It was like coupled with a teacher pay bill, I think.
They say that legislation is never dead. So what happens sometimes is that a bill that gets through the House and makes it to the other side, or a bill that we have on our side that's sitting there can be scooped out, and we move forward with a subject that becomes important. And so, that was something that leadership wanted to do as we approach the end of the year. So I was grateful that they did that. We have some real folks on leadership, like Representative Dean Arp, who's been there. He's one of the senior members of the appropriations chair, which is, who gets to decide where the money is spent. He's an advocate. He presented this.
I heard you had to go ask the speaker, Dustin Hall, to bring this bill up for a vote. Did you have to do that?
Yes. Well, I mean, this is the speaker's done a great job. He's new in his speakership as well, but he has very much.
I think he was mad at me because I think we were upset that he didn't push something forward, and this staff called to tell me how pro-life he was, and I was like, prove it. I don't know. I think he's mad at me. So I was just trying to give him props because I think you asked him.
He didn't say anything about being mad at anybody, but there is a for us to be able to get to that 72 or higher number, right? We have to win elections, and so it is a constant tightrope because some districts like mine, my district's very tight, and so. Just trying to navigate timing of things and, to make sure that we're going to be successful in what we're trying to do. So, last week, whenever this got brought up, Speaker Hall lets the House caucus decide which direction we're going to go. If we decided that, it was bad timing or something that we didn't want to do, he was going to let us, do that. And so I appreciate his leadership style. I think he's done a great job as the new speaker, and I appreciate him standing firm in his convictions and letting the House operate the way that it should.
So what's the status of the bill now? So it passed the House, it went to the Senate, they dropped this defund Planned Parenthood, the state Medicaid dollars, into another type of bill. Right. So I heard it's coming back to the House. When are you going to vote on it?
So they have the Senate has done a version of this themselves. So this was a way that we could have our fingerprints on this as well. So leadership's going to get together and sort this out. So this is kind of the behind the curtain how the sausage is made. So our bill is in the Senate side. Their bill is on our side. So leadership will be, working together to see how we can finalize ironing out something that's going to be beneficial and impactful.
So there's going to be a vote coming up, and then it would go to the governor. So the pressure point for pro-life activists, you're like, what are you telling me all this for? The reason I'm telling you all this is we need your help, and I'm going to drop the link here in the show, and I'll drop it on the YouTube because we need your help to send messages now to the governor telling not to veto this, because this is common sense. You don't even have to be pro-life to understand that an agency that's profiting off the despair of women, that's been known, like in the state of Texas, they even admitted they had been double billing the state Medicaid for years. They actually Planned Parenthood had to pay back the state of Medicaid for their double billing. They're a known bad actor beyond being the leading killer of children. So this is a common sense thing, especially when you consider all of the federally qualified health centers, the true community nonprofits that are out there in rural, in underserved communities, already being approved by the federal government, getting grants, who aren't the biggest, political spenders. They have no political spending. They're true 501c3s. We don't need Planned Parenthood. And that needs to be the message to the governor of North Carolina, that Planned Parenthood's not needed, that there are plenty of true nonprofit community health centers that will support women in crisis pregnancies, who will help teens who think they might have an STD and who need treatment. Because, the fact is, Planned Parenthood treats less than 20% of the STDs they even diagnose. It's not even a good business to go to, even if you're not even talking about committing abortions. This is a bad business. This is a predatory business. This is basically a front for this huge democratic machine. But so that's going to be the action item for the Pro-Life Gen. I want you to pay attention. Jonathan, thank you so much for getting onto the show today to kind of give us a glimpse into what you're doing in the legislature, why the pro-life generation needs to continue to be involved in state level politics, and then really giving us a glimpse into your heart and why you're serving, and then updating us about this battle that too few know it's happening.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for all the great work. And to your listeners, 26 is going to be a big year. Trying to get back to that 72 number. And, the left, and including our governor, look at North Carolina as like the last safe haven of the Southeast. So they are going to try as hard as they can. So, doubling down your efforts in 26 is going to be essential. So thank you guys again for your continued work. And I look forward to being a part of it.
I'll see you in North Carolina, Jonathan.
Perfect.
We'll be there. And for everybody tuning in, make sure I'm going to drop another link here in the show for Students for Life Action, where you can actually get involved and sign up now to start volunteering with Students for Life Action in 2026, because we are going to be on the ground in North Carolina for state and federal races. We're going to need your help. This episode is brought to you by the Pro-Life Gen Shop and our brand new, hot off the press, Planned Parenthood Tears mug. This is a custom Kristan Hawkins designed mug that I specifically requested because I have been waiting for a long, long time for Planned Parenthood to be defunded. So for $10, actually $9.99, you can get your Planned Parenthood Tears mug. So just go to shop.prolifegen.org and get your mug today, and you can sip your coffee or energy drink, in my case, in a brand new mug, celebrating the fact that we finally defunded Planned Parenthood because of you and I. Now we're going to change pace from North Carolina to Virginia, which is a cluster of epic proportions. As you know, there's a big election happening next Tuesday in Virginia. Students for Life's Executive Vice President, Tina Whittington, one of our very own, is our first future pro-life champion. She's running for Orange County School Board. So if you live in Orange County, Virginia, make sure you vote for Tina for school board. But we have been on the ground since August, door knocking, because Virginia likes to be weird and have an election every year. So Virginia and New Jersey have off-year elections, meaning their state legislature, all 100 seats, and their delegates, all the seats in their Senate, the governor, the lieutenant governor, the attorney general, that's all up for election right now. And it is a mess because Northern Virginia, which borders DC and has all the bureaucrats living in it, is a cesspool of liberalness. And quite frankly, should probably just be given over to Maryland and make Maryland even more extreme blue state. And then Virginia can return back to normal. But here's the deal. Because of the abortion bans in the American South, which are awesome, they're hoping, as there is the Democrats and liberals and pro-abortion advocates, are hoping to make Virginia a safe haven for late-term abortion. So you have all of these red states surrounding or around Virginia. They want to make Virginia the safe haven state for abortion and expand abortion access in the state of Virginia. This is how they're doing it. So in Virginia, in the founding fathers' wisdom, they've made it a little bit more difficult to pass constitutional ballot referendums. You actually have to have the legislature vote twice on the ballot referendum before it even gets to the voters. And you have to do it in 2 different legislative sessions, meaning there has to be an election in between. So earlier this year in 2025, the state legislature, which is dominated by Democrats, the Senate has a Democrat majority. The House has a slim Democrat majority by like one person, voted to advance a abortion in all 9 months up until the moment of birth. No penalties, even if a baby is born alive during an abortion and not given, life-sustaining care. Like, so basically allowing infanticide. They voted to put that on the ballot, to change the Virginia Constitution to allow abortion whenever, wherever, by whoever. Okay. Now we have an election and we've got to, as pro-lifers, take one of the chambers, win one of the chambers in Richmond. So when it gets voted on in the new legislative session, that you have one pro-life chamber that can vote no, and they will stop this from getting on the ballot, which they hope will be on the ballot in May of 2026. They don't even want to wait till November. They want so many dang abortions and dead babies in the Democratic Party in Virginia. They don't even want to wait till November's 2026, U.S. midterm elections. They want another special election in May 2026. I know, crazy. So Students for Life Action's been active in 4 key House of Delegate races in Virginia, trying to flip the Virginia House of Delegates from Democrat control by one to Republican control. And so is every conservative group in the state of Virginia. And it's not looking good when you look at early voting numbers. It's terrifying. So we are going to be out there door knocking all weekend in these 4 House of Delegate races. And I hope if you know of anybody in the state of Virginia, you tell them to get out and vote pro-life next Tuesday. We desperately need every person we can to get out next Tuesday, November 4th, and vote pro-life in Virginia. So that's going on the periphery. If we lose next Tuesday night, and you see on the news next Tuesday night that Democrats have retained control of the Virginia House of Delegates and the Virginia Senate, this will be your trigger for action, because this is what this means. That means come January, they will vote to get a late-term abortion on the ballot, and we will have from January to May to stop Virginia voters from voting into a law, into their constitution, abortion up until the moment of birth. It's going to be like a campaign on steroids. And so I really encourage you to go to studentsforlifeaction.org/Virginia. You can sign up to door knock this weekend. But if you give your information, everybody who's signing up, that whole page is going to be changing over to our Say No to Late-Term Abortion Extremism campaign, which will be launching in Virginia if we lose this election on Tuesday night. So that's happening over here in the pro-life movement. Something that you probably don't know about that was just reported, that's literally happening right now as I'm filming this podcast for you, is that the Democrats of Virginia are really mad that Republicans in Texas were legally mandated to redistrict. And when they did that, it created new congressional districts, which they believe will be Republican seats in the U.S. House of Representatives. As you know, control of the U.S. House of Representatives is Republican, but it's like right there on the line, okay? So in response, California got really mad, and they're going to redistrict California and take away and gerrymander all these weird districts. So essentially Republican districts turn Democrat districts, and they're hoping to like nullify any new Republican votes that might come out of Texas with new Democrat votes or Congress members out of California. And so they're like fighting, and Gavin Newsom, who wants to be president, is being super mad. So Virginia Democrats were like, hey, what about us? Don't leave us hanging. So Virginia Democrats have decided that even though the election is Tuesday, they have reconvened their session. They've pulled everybody back from the campaign trail because they are pretty confident they're going to win. Even the governor's race, it's looking like the pro-abortion candidate, Abigail Spanberger, who's like Planned Parenthood's best friend, is going to win. They're pretty confident that they're going to win. Hopefully they're counting their chickens before they hatch, right? But they've called everybody into Richmond, and they're voting this week on a constitutional amendment to nullify the 2020 bipartisan commissioning district, which makes the House of Representative districts. They can basically redistrict 3 Republican House seats in Virginia and turn them. You always see those maps of like these like weird congressional districts, right? Where it's like, instead of just like here, it's like this, like over here. That's what they want to do to those 3 Republican seats, It's causing Republicans to lose 3 more seats in the U.S. House of Representatives come November 2026 in the election. So they're meeting this week to pass this before the Tuesday election. So then when they get back to session in Richmond in January, they can pass it again. Say, see, look, we passed it twice with an election in between. And then they can put it on the ballot again in May, along with what their hope is, an abortion all 9 months amendment. And they're hoping that they'll be able to, because it's kind of like even Republicans and Democrats, everybody hates like redistricting. They hate the view that these small elite in the state capital are going to gerrymander district, right? It's like not something that like, Democrats or Republicans gets excited about unless you're like a super Democrat Republican and, you're like tallying up who has what seats in the House of Representatives. Not everyone's like a dork like me. Most people are like, they don't care about that. And it kind of makes them feel like a little like, squeamish, like this seems a little sleazy, right? So what they're hoping is they can get it on the ballot in May with the abortion referendum, because then the Democrats will spend hundreds of millions of dollars getting pro-abortion voters out who are going to be liberal to vote for this abortion all 9 months constitutional amendment, which then will, while they're at the voting booth, they know they'll probably just vote for the redistricting thing too. That's the plan. That's just been unveiled in the state of Virginia and in Richmond, and it's absolutely bananas. It's super sleazy, but that's what is going on. So now Tuesday's election not only is going to determine whether or not tens of thousands of babies are going to die in painful late-term abortions, and Virginia becomes a safe haven for abortion across the American South, it's also going to determine whether or not Republicans can keep control of the U.S. House of Representatives in November 2026 when we have the U.S. midterm elections. So all that to say, if you know anybody in Virginia, tell them to vote pro-life and to get out to vote next Tuesday, November 4th, because human lives are on the line. Because we're not even talking about just babies in Virginia if this amendment gets to the ballot, which we now expect it's going to. And we know we're going to be outspent, just like we were outspent in all of the ballot referendum states in 2023 and 2024, right? Not only do we have this, but now we're going to be talking about human lives at the national scale, because if you want to defund Planned Parenthood and keep Planned Parenthood defunded of our U.S. taxpayer dollars, which happened, right, in the big, beautiful bill, but only for 1 year, which we're going to have to do again in January when budget reconciliation comes up again for the new year starting in January. If you want to keep Planned Parenthood defunded, you have to keep pro-lifers and Republicans in control of the U.S. House of Representatives. So this is a little thing that a lot of people are like, Virginia, I don't care about. I'm on the other side of the country. That's going to have massive implications on human lives. So call anybody you know who lives in Virginia and tell them to get out the vote. It's that important. All right. Thank you for attending my PSA on why you should vote. Now I need to talk to you about what's happening on the other side of the country in Oregon. So Oregon Health Sciences University has unveiled in Nature magazine this new stunning development who's going to help gay and infertile couples all across America. First of all, anything coming out of OHSU, you should be very nervous about, because it's a well-known school and medical school and hospital, but it's also well known for a lot of really not good things, not just treating people with diseases. So in vitro gametogenesis, probably saying it wrong. Sorry. If you know me, I am not known for pronouncing things correctly. Gametogenesis, IVG. This is the new frontier of our dystopian world of assisted reproductive technology. So surrogacy, sperm donors, IVF, and now IVG. You got to keep up with the terms, people. I know there's a lot of new terms. And I know it kind of seems sometimes like there's no end to how we're trying to manipulate biology and trample the rights of tiny human beings to manufacture children outside the marital act, but that's what we're doing. So let me explain what IVG, in vitro gametogenesis, is. Gametogenesis is the act of creating a gamete. Now, to refresh basic reproductive biology, you need a male gamete, sperm, and a female gamete, egg, to make a new human baby. I talk about this all the time on campus. It's surprising how people apparently don't know. Gameostasis happens naturally in our bodies. But researchers want to make progress creating gametes in the lab with non-sex cells like skin or blood cells. Now you might be like, why would anyone do this? Why would they do this? Well, some heterosexual adults who want to create a human being, their gametes, sperm or egg, are not viable for conceiving a baby. Or they may not produce sperm, right? Men, may not be able to produce sperm, or women may be born without certain parts, right? And they can't produce, they don't have the ovary, right? Or they're missing an ovary, or they had to have their ovary removed and they're not producing as many eggs, right? And releasing eggs. So what they've been trying to do is use IVG as part of the IVF process to create biological children in the lab, creating gametes. There are other couples who are gay who are interested in IVG because they know it's biologically impossible for them to conceive a child naturally, and they want a child that has both of their genetic material in them. Normally, gay couples who use IVF, they might use, if it's a lesbian couple, they'll use one of the lesbian's eggs, but then they'll buy or they'll get donated sperm, or vice versa, right? And then there's always, like, I was seeing this article yesterday in People magazine from some gay actor who was like, I don't want to know which one of my twins is biologically mine, because he and his spouse, I think they have twins, and one twin was made with one of their sperm and one was made with the other sperm. I don't want to know conversations I don't want to have. So the downside, and this is what we talk a lot about the IVF, is, people are like, oh, you don't like IVF. It's about helping infertile couples. Yeah, it's also helping gay couples who then purchase parts of humans to create a child because they feel that they're entitled to have a child. That's what it is. The goal of IVG and why OHSU is so excited about their development is that this will allow people who are heterosexual couples who are infertile or gay couples to have a child that's genetically related to both parents. And you might think, well, how are they doing this? Well, they are taking skin cells and putting a nucleus of a skin cell into an empty egg, a donor egg that's been stripped of its own nucleus, so its own parts. So like there's a donor egg, they strip out all the parts, so you basically have the candy shell. I have M&Ms over here, sorry. And the nucleus comes out. They take the nucleus from the gay man's skin cell, put that genetic material inside of the donor shell egg, and bam, you've created a new egg, a new gamete from a gay man, and still a donor shell, candy shell egg, which, I mean, I'm sure they're probably working on making an artificial egg candy shell, so you won't have to rely on anybody for this. That's how they're doing it. So they actually announced in Nature magazine on September 30th that they created 32 human lives through this process of transplanting the nucleus of a skin cell into an egg stripped of its own nucleus, and then fertilizing that egg, that gamete, with sperm, another gamete, to create 82 innocent human beings. And they're calling this progress. Now, according to Oregon Right to Life, who wrote about this extensively, they said the majority of the fertilized zygotes, so remember, we didn't come from zygotes, we once were a zygote, right? A zygote is a stage of our life. They use these terms like fertilized, egg or zygote as if we didn't come from them. No, it's a stage of our life. You were once a zygote, right? You were once a human in the zygotic stage, just like you were once a human in the embryonic stage. I think it's important that we use correct terms because this is really confusing because people tend to think of a fertilized egg as still a part of the mother or a zygote as a part of the mother, and it's not. If you're a zygote, you're a human in the zygotic stage, okay? So these humans in the zygotic stage, quote, did not progress beyond the 4 to 8 cell stage and displayed chromosomal abnormalities because shock, there were things that were going wrong. Just 9% of these humans developed into the blastocyst stage, and none were cultured beyond that point, meaning they were all killed at that point. Oregon Right to Life continued saying, if such research continues, it will pave the way for in vitro gametogenesis, enabling the creation of new human beings in laboratories using skin cells, including the skin cells of more than two parents. This is also important because in Europe and in Asia, these triad couples, 3 people, have been trying to put all 3 of their genetic material into one human being to then claim parental rights, have 3 people be parents. I gotta take a breather because that is horrific. What could go wrong with this? Now, it's interesting. OHSU in Nature magazine said that what they did was totally ethical and they followed ethics. You know, when they say that, the ethics is that you just don't let those human beings grow. The ethics is they killed all of them. So when you read that, they're like, but we did it ethically. Yeah, they created new human beings that had all chromosomal abnormalities because shock, they couldn't figure out, because when they took the nucleus of the skin cell in, they can't figure out which chromosomes. They weren't able to order the chromosomes. So like some of the new humans had like 3 of one of the other. You know, they didn't have the pairs. You know, you have pairs, right? And that's how you get Down syndrome or trisomy 18 is when you have a chromosomal abnormality when someone gets an extra chromosome. Yeah, that's what happened. Because they can't figure out yet how to tell it, oh, you need this chromosome, and then you need this chromosome. You need this one. You don't need 2 of these. Oh, you do need those. You can't not have that. So they're working on that. Don't worry. That's like what OHSU is doing. This needs to be stopped immediately. When the medical industry invests in unnatural reproductive technology, instead of like, I don't know, researching, diagnosing, treating the underlying causes of infertility, bottom line, it's an affront to women's health and women and couples' legitimate desire to raise biological children. Couples who can't conceive naturally are routinely just sent to IVF clinics to create designer babies. That happens constantly. Instead of like being sent to clinics to have fairly common fertility conditions like PCOS, endometriosis, low T be diagnosed and treated. Fixing the underlying cause, and we've talked about this, of infertility is not as lucrative as creating new humans, designer babies in the lab. So like there's just no incentive there. There's just no incentive. IVG provides even more incentives to doctors not to diagnose and treat underlying causes of infertility of heterosexual couples who are desperate to conceive children. This needs to be stopped because more children are killed in IVF than abortion every year. I had to say this last week in front of I was filling in for Charlie at an event in Dallas, and the room was filled with a lot of dedicated pro-lifers who spent years raising money for pregnancy centers, maternity homes. But I knew the audience was very evangelical, Protestant. And my experience is when I have that opportunity, I always bring up IVF because this is something that's not talked about in the evangelical church at all. As a former evangelical, I can tell you that. And I brought it up in my speech. And now there were some billionaires in the room who I'm pretty sure will never donate to Students for Life. So that kind of hurt. But I did it in a loving way. But it was important for me to bring that up. Because when I said this in my speech, that IVF kills more children than abortion. 1, it's the right thing to do. 2, it's what Charlie would have done. And 3, it needs to be said because we have to get this out there. We have to get this out in the pro-life movement. We have to get this out in our churches. IVG and this whole new wild world, bad stuff, dystopian world is going to create more human deaths. It's going to increase the death toll 100%. As you already saw, these 82 human beings were just discarded and we were told, oh, it was totally ethical. Everything was totally ethical. It was on the up and up. The other reason IVG needs to be stopped immediately is that adults, let me say, I've said this before, I'll say it again, adults are not entitled to children. You are not entitled to have a biological children. I know it's a hard truth. I know that hurts people's feelings. In the parent-child relationship, the child is entitled to the protection of two parents. The child is entitled to be conceived and loved and raised by his or her biological mother and father. A child is entitled to the parent that's sacrificing for him or her, not the other way around. It's a perversion of our use of free will as adults to create children and demand that they be sacrificed for us because we have a sick conviction that we hold this conviction that we're entitled to have a biological child, no matter how many ethical boundaries it crosses, no matter how many human beings were killed to get to there, that somehow the ends justified the means. They don't. And I know saying this is hard, and there's a lot of good people, well-meaning people out there who use IVF and would be appalled and are appalled when they hear this being talked about. And I'm not accusing those people or you, if this is you, of going into IVF with this attitude, but this is the worldview that the IVF industry has created and promotes. I think we need real accountability because it's our duty as parents to know the kind of mess we're getting into before we sign over our body, our money, and our children's lives to this technology. IVG is creating this whole new human market of human rights violations. It's literally going to lead to the designer baby. Once again, please watch the movie Gattaca with Ethan Hawke and Jude Law from the late 90s. I know you might have to go to Fandango or whatever, Voodoo, whatever it used to be called, and buy. It's probably only $5. I know there's no Blockbusters anymore if you rent a movie, but find the movie and watch it. I don't think it's on Netflix, if you still have Netflix. IVG and IVF dehumanize our children in a world, by the way, that's already dehumanizing them. That we talk about them as fertilized embryos, fertilized eggs, fetuses, products of conception, contents of the uterus. We're doing it again with IVG. That's what the reproductive technology, assisted reproductive technology movement does. Prenatal children IVF are blastocysts, fertilized eggs, embryos, fetuses who can be frozen, discarded, or my favorite one, selectively reduced if there's multiples that happens in the pregnancy. What about the ethical oversight? Where is the actual questions of going, is it okay to create human beings who haven't even asked to be created, that we can just kill them at will because they can't speak yet and they're small and they're weak and because we want one? No. I tell my kids that all the time. Just because you want something doesn't mean you're going to get it. I'm sorry that this has to be so blunt and it hurts people's feelings, but this is unethical. And where is this going to lead us? Where is this going to stop? Because guess what? It's not going to stop because there's a financial incentive not to stop. Speaking of IVF, I want to help you all out. I've got 2 quick things I want to get to that based on some of the questions I've been receiving in my DMs. Yes, I do try to read all of my DMs on Instagram. How do you talk to a friend about IVF? Somebody who's suffering from infertility about IVF in a way that doesn't hurt their feelings. Trust me, as a naturally direct and pretty brutally honest person, I think, it can be difficult sometimes to have this conversation and make it land with them. But I will tell you the truth. Don't ask me, does this just make me look fat? Or I'll tell you. So I always tell people, don't ask unless you really want to know, because trust me, most of the time I'm moderating the comments that come out of my mouth. I know it might shock you. Just think about the ones that are still inside that I haven't said. When a friend confides in you that they're suffering from infertility, I don't think you immediately should launch into why IVF is evil, and don't just be flippantly like, oh, you can just adopt. There's something there, right? They have this true and good desire to want to have children. That's not a bad thing. Having that desire to want to have biological children is not a bad thing. I think first you have to understand what's going on. Is she just a little concerned? Has she just gotten devastating news? What kind of diagnosis has she gotten? Has she already started looking at IVF, or is she just beginning the process? One, you want her to know IVF isn't the only option. All moral objections to IVF aside, that should never be your starting point or a friend's starting point when suffering from infertility, because one, IVF is super expensive. Once again, not talking about the moral implications. IVF is super expensive, and it is does not have a great efficacy rate. Usually under 50% efficacy. Doesn't make pragmatic sense. That's not the first place to start. According to National Institutes of Health, 85 to 90% of infertility cases are treatable with conventional therapies like surgery or medication. I would ask your friend, do you know that most cases of infertility are treatable? Do you have a good doctor who's been able to diagnose you with you or your husband and able to explain why you're not conceiving naturally? That's the first place to start. And then if she says, yep, and my doctor said this, tell her to get a second opinion, because as someone who has 2 children with medically complex diseases, never just trust a doctor, because you never know what their day was like, if they've really read the chart, what their bias is, who, especially with doctors too, who they're getting paid by when you're talking about the pharmaceutical industry and how they kind of reward doctors for, prescribing this drug over that drug. Yeah. You always want to have a second opinion. The place I always send friends to is the St. Paul VI Institute. It's stpaulvi.com. You can also go to factsaboutfertility.org to get information about natural family planning methods. And I know you're like, natural family planning, that's like Catholic contraception. No, natural family planning can actually help you conceive and can help teach you about your body. It can help diagnose the actual problems that are happening, the biological problems that then need to be treated. That's why the St. Paul VI Institute in Omaha, Nebraska is fantastic. And I have a lot of friends who are not Catholic, by the way, who have conceived children after going to the St. Paul VI Institute. Tell the truth, even if it's uncomfortable. Do it in love, but first ask the questions and figure out what's really going on. But once again, do it in love. Make sure she knows you love her. And I know it's hard in social media because we put up clips and people are like, oh my gosh, Kristan just said this thing. Yeah, that's what social media is. It's short. No one likes to have long conversations on social media. Trust me, those videos never do well. That's why the podcast videos never even come up on social media usually, right? Because they're too long. They're not short. They're not pithy. Life isn't social media. All right. The next thing I want to help you out with that I was asked about recently is, how do you have a conversation with a fellow Christian who says that they're pro-choice? Here's a pro tip. Never let a conversation about abortion with a Christian who says they're pro-choice turn into a game of dueling Bible verses. Personally, as a Catholic, that's really important because we're not the best at memorizing scripture as Catholics. The Catholic Church does not have, and it's one of my biggest problems when I entered the church. There's no Sunday school, right? There's no Awana club at church, which teaches your kids to memorize scripture. You're going to lose that game if you're a Catholic. Probably. Sorry. Don't turn it into this, because what's going to happen is they're going to start quoting usually it's a quote of the Old Testament. It's stupid stuff, right? And most of it's, stuff from Deuteronomy or Numbers. And it's, these very old purity codes that they had, which, by the way, Jesus came to fulfill the old law, and we're not bound to the Old Testament as Christians. Everybody who's a Christian should know that, but somehow in all these debates with Christians, it always comes back to the Old Testament, or it's it was never mentioned in the Bible. Just don't do it. It's not going to lead anywhere, and quite frankly, it becomes a very boring debate at some point, right? I think you have to keep in mind, don't also go into the debate saying, I'm going to change my friend's mind immediately. I think that's the recipe for disaster. We all love a good video where you show them a picture of an abortion, actual procedure or a victim of abortion, and they break down in tears and they immediately say that they were all wrong, right? That's probably never going to happen to you in most of your conversations about abortion. Why? Because human beings, we're kind of stubborn. We'd never like to admit ever that we're wrong about anything. I can think about myself, and then when I've changed my opinions on things, it's never in a conversation. It's usually after the conversation. I'm like, man, I couldn't answer that question. That, what they said really bothered me. And then you have to assess, why did what they say really bother you, right? most humans don't like to admit they're wrong ever, and especially face to face. So I think you have to see your job when you're talking to a friend who's pro-choice as planting seeds to ask questions that they struggle answering, right? That's what I do on campuses. I want people to leave my conversations with them and be like, crap, she had me on that. I didn't have an answer to that. I need to go research that, right? Or I want the people who are watching the conversation, especially if somebody's like really mean to me, I'm like, they're not listening to anything I have to say. I want the people who are listening to those conversations to be like, wow, I don't agree with what she said, but that was a good point. I need to research that. I need to look into that, because that's when you're going to see the minds change. I think the other thing is, so don't quote Bible verses. It's not going to end well. 2, don't enter the conversation assuming you're going to convert them in that one conversation. 3, I think you have to show genuine interest in understanding why they believe what they believe, because more times than not, when you're talking to a friend who's like dug in their heels about abortion, even if it's a Christian friend, there's probably an abortion story there. There's probably an abortion story. Most of us didn't become outspokenly pro-life or pro-choice because we read a Bible verse. It's because there's something personal happened to us. Right? Like I got started in the pregnancy center movement, meeting women who had abortions, meeting women who were in those abusive relationships, thinking that abortion was their only option. That's what changed my heart. Thinking, isn't there a better way? I think you have to listen, ask questions, and get to the heart of the matter of why are they saying that? Where is that coming from? Because it's not the Bible that's justifying abortion. It's something that they've witnessed, something they've personally gone through in their life that was very deeply moving to them, that's left an impression on them, that then they're going to the Bible and trying to use a Bible verse to justify. Hey Project Jen, it's Kristan here. And if you're like me, spring is a perfect time to do some spring cleaning around the house. And I can't think of a better way to refresh your space than with brand new, ultra soft bed sheets. Well, it does get better. With bed sheets that support saving babies. That's why I'm so excited to share with you that Students for Life America has teamed up with Cloud Bedsheet Fundraising to give $20 from every set of sheets you purchase directly to our pro-life mission. These sheets are high quality, ultra soft, and have a 99% satisfaction rate. And yes, I have them in my own home and I love them. It's so easy to be part of this. You head to 123fundraiser.com/life and choose from beautiful colors and the sizes that you need, and then you'll be making impact for life with every set of sheets you buy. Plus, they come with 100% satisfaction money back guarantee, so there's no risk, only reward. Shop now at 123fundraiser.com/life and help save babies with every cozy night's sleep you have. All right, guys, thank you for joining me for today's episode. I hope that was helpful for you. I hope you've subscribed to the Kristan Hawkins Show and you've told your friends to subscribe so you can follow along for more discussions and tips like this. If you want to hear from me daily on pro-life news, please join my personal text line by texting the word Kristan to 53445. Until next week, let's keep speaking up for the voiceless, and please pray for Virginia and the election next week. Bye, everyone.